Hi, I'm Sarah Cowgill, along with Andrew Moran, Dave Patterson, Graham Noble, and John Clark. And this is The Conservative Five, an online TV production of Liberty Nation News. On today's episode, taking care of business. We've all been talking about the situation with foreign students stirring up trouble in a modern-day Shea, Mahmoud Khalil. And Autopen gate is certainly taking up a lot of interest, and we'll discuss the latest in pardoning the Autopen pardons. The hysterical greenies have been broken by Elon Musk and Donald Trump in climate activism. It's the Skids. Finally, it's another quick fix to flex the brain in Just for Fun, Volume 67. All this and more in this edition of The Conservative Five.
Love the interview.
Mahmoud Khalil, a Columbia University activist being held in a Louisiana detention center, is rapidly turning into a contentious debate over freedom of speech. Khalil is an outspoken pro-Palestinian activist who's taken a leadership role in the increasingly volatile campus protests. So who is this new face of campus radicalization? Well, a green card holder for starters. Laura, roll video, please, on the State Department spokesperson Tammy Bruce talking about it.
Secretary Rubio said on March 6th, those who support designated terrorist organizations, including Hamas, threaten U.S. national security. And we intend to use the department's broad authority to revoke visas when information comes to light indicating a visa holder may be inadmissible or ineligible under U.S. immigration law.
Okay, Dave, you know, the guy was born in Syria to Palestinian refugees. That's not a bad start. Anyway, Mahmoud Khalil came to the U.S. in 2022, attended Columbia, that's kind of a dream, and is set to graduate this May. So why bite the hand that feeds you?
There are activists and fanatics like Khalil don't see what they're doing as biting the hand that feeds them. They see Americans as stupid and weak for allowing them to do that. And they see that their cause, no matter how vile or venal or vicious, is justified. We make a mistake, I think, that when we judge these people by the civil behavior standards that Americans use to judge themselves, they don't fall into that category. Khalil and his ilk believe their ends justify their means, and the use of violence and anti-Semitic hostility on university campuses is justified, notably Columbia University in this case, Khalil's alma mater. But make no mistake, Khalil is a Hamas terrorist sympathizer. Though he says differently, he foments violence in the name of Palestinians. But it's Hamas that is the beneficiary of this behavior, clear and simple. Among Khalil's past employers, for example, is the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine. These workers in Gaza actively participated in the horrendous, murderous killing spree of Hamas on October 17, 2023. Let's not forget that. Currently he is sitting, as you say, in a Louisiana LaSalle detention center, and it's a good place for him and any other non-citizen who chooses violence as a definition of free speech.
Agreed. And that's where my question to John Clark comes in, our panelist who's a lawyer and a all-over smarty pants. But a green card isn't a do whatever you want in America. I mean, there are conditions. Can you explain them to us briefly?
Sure, I'll do the best I can, and I think Dave has given us an indictment of the man, and I don't necessarily disagree with that, but as a lawyer, I'll say there are a lot of facts that are not, immediately aware or apparent. So the green card is an interesting middle road. If he were here on just a student visa, it would be easier to deport him. If he had gone past the green card, which the next stage is to actually become a U.S. citizen, he would have all the benefits the rest of us have. I think the question is, and by the way, so the standard then before the immigration ruling will not be the beyond a reasonable doubt standard, but the clear and convincing evidence standard. It's actually a lower standard for the government than a criminal case. The law says that as a green card holder, he is, quote, expected to support the democratic form of government. of the United States. And as Dave pointed out, the allegation is that he's a Hamas sympathizer. Well, a sympathizer is one thing. And the question is, how far has he gone to support a terrorist organization? We're going to be looking at the First Amendment standards, and I noticed that just an absolute plethora of not to use that word, but endless list of liberal outcry over this. In fact, the New Republic said the only free speech the conservatives actually care about is their own. Now, I cared about free speech as a Democrat, and now I do as a conservative. And I think it shouldn't matter. But if there's ever any hypocrisy, what the Democrats have done with free speech, from COVID to professors at Middlebury College who were assaulted, to prayer in public, to pro-life groups, to sending the FBI into Catholic charities and churches to spy on people, it's kind of ironic. But I think the standard comes down to the facts. And that's why I actually don't know all the facts. Being a sympathizer is one thing. Brandenburg versus Ohio says that the KKK can go out and say hateful things as long as they're not inciting imminent violence. And actually that stemmed from Schenck, which was an Oliver Wendell Holmes decision in 1919, which said that whether there was a clear and present danger. So I think this is going to hinge upon what kind of evidence is adduced to show not that he spoke in favor of Palestine. That is his right, even arguably on a green card. That's where he's in a gray area. But certainly under the First Amendment, as opposed to inciting students to commit violence on campus or violence against Jewish people, and whether it was imminent or not. And that, I think, is going to be, the burden will be on the government to show that by clear and convincing evidence. And if so, he goes. And if not, I think it's sending a message to other people to think twice about the boundaries of the law, because the rule of law is back. And whether or not, because there's another angle here, which is the 1952 Immigration and Nationality Act, which Lisa Donner talks about in her article at Liberty Nation News on this subject. And I'm not sure that also weighs into the court's decision or how applicable it will be. But I think a lot of it is going to come down to whether the facts were mere sympathizer or advocating for violence against people or property in violation of the law, even of free speech protections. That's an exception. And when you're under a green card, you're not supposed to advocate against democracy. But by definition, free speech is democracy. So I don't think that's determinative.
All right. Well, Graham, I am a big free speech advocate, but is this a denial of the First Amendment with this guy? Or are we just trying to cover all of our bases?
Well, I'm sort of going to go echoing a point that John just touched on, which is, how far has this guy gone? Because as far as I'm concerned, if he is not known to have actually committed any crime or any act of violence, and he's not known to be having in any way materially supported Hamas, then to me, this is a complete violation of his First Amendment rights. It's appalling that he had his green card stripped away. It's ridiculous that he's going to be deported. Look, I don't see the guy as a hero by any means. He's a thug, and Hamas is an abhorrent organization. And, hopefully the Israelis will finally get around to completely, wiping them off the face of the planet. So I'm in no way sympathizing with this guy's views. But I am not going to be a hypocrite about free speech. I don't like it when people say, well, free speech, but you can't say this. Well, no, actually you can. As far as I'm concerned, you can say anything you damn well please. And so I think his rights have been violated. Now, if the federal government can somehow manage to perhaps link him, perhaps through his past with UNRWA, there to maybe linking him to be actually connected to the Hamas organization, well, then that's a different matter. That's a whole different ballgame. But as far as I'm concerned, if all he's guilty of is, speaking up in kind of sympathy or support of the Palestinians and even of Hamas specifically, I think his rights are being violated. I'm all about free speech, and I'm not going to employ a double standard.
I absolutely agree. And I think we at Liberty Nation News are complete champions of that. What we don't know, I guess, is what what they have that they can use. I mean, Andrew, is this Trump administration just trying to, set an example with this guy? Or is there something going on there? They have anything on him?
I think that they're setting the example of that the Dick Cheney era or the Barack Obama era, that every non-U.S. citizen does not have full rights under the U.S. Constitution. By doing so, by claiming that all non-U.S. citizens don't have any legal rights, except for, of course, not obtaining federal office or what was the other one? It's so the right to vote in federal office. Aside from that, from my understanding of the Constitution, is that everyone has rights under the Bill of Rights. This is one of the reasons why the Bush administration received bipartisan support for spying on the public. I'll admit not to being a constitutional scholar, and I'll defer to our wonderful Scott Cosenza for these issues, but it should be concerning that the U.S. government is not providing due process, mirroring what happened consistently during the Obama years. Now, perhaps John Clark is going to contradict my position here, but perhaps the administration is confirming that neither party is interested in the full-blown Constitution and only interested in various aspects of it. And, I think it was Mr. Clark who mentioned it, about the progressive lawmakers only, targeting aspects of free speech when it comes to what conservatives have to say. But the right also has to be just as consistent about it. During the 2024 campaign and leading into it, conservatives were constantly hand-wringing about how, my free speech and everyone has a right to say whatever they want. But then as soon as they obtain the keys to power, now it's the exact opposite. Now, perhaps I agree with John Clark. We don't have all the facts about Mahmoud Khalil, but, regardless, the fundamentals of it is exactly what Graham was saying, that you can't be a hypocrite on free speech. We can say anything you want. I'm even going to go as far as that whole nonsense about, screaming fire in a theater. That's a private issue, that's a private sector issue. But free speech for me is you can say anything you damn well want, even if it's sympathizing with terrorist organizations like Hamas.
I think I would take issue. And I'm happy.
Please.
We're giving a Canadian free speech.
And
The reason that was him down.
We don't have any out there.
He speaks for everybody but Canadians.
We don't have it out
I
there,
would
guys.
say that is because you bring up precisely the exception. And that is you cannot scream fire in a crowded theater when there's no fire. And the consequences of the trampling of people falls on you and you go to jail. And that is essentially the way I see Mahmoud Khalil in his inciting the students to take over the administration building, to destroy property. And it is a consequence of his rhetoric over the bullhorn that caused that to happen. And it is for that reason that the government has taken exception to his behavior. And the green card does not protect that behavior.
Just push back just slightly here. When it comes to not screaming fire in a movie theater, on a fundamental level of free speech, that is up to the movie theater to decide that, not the government. If the movie theater,
it's a criminal action. It's still
No, it's a criminal
murder somebody either in a movie
You can't
theater.
go down the rabbit hole of movie theater etiquette. So I'm going to go ahead and close this segment out. It was a good one. We could go on for hours, but we'd bore all of you people to tears that are watching. So, Americans love the First Amendment, and above all else, want it protected, unless, of course, it's something they don't like to hear. So how Trump handles Khalil could set the tone for the next 4 years. As always, Liberty Nation News will let all of you know how this saga plays out. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks, panel. Autopen Gate. The latest demand from the American public is for President Trump to get to the bottom of those last-minute pardons that Joe Biden may or may not have personally signed. I should also add that maybe Joe Biden may or may not have understood what his minions were up to. So let's watch a little clip. Trump dropping the hammer.
Generally speaking, signed it with Autopen. So how would he know that Autopen is a big deal? I don't know. They're having who's doing this. So when my people come up, Will and all of the people, Steve, they come up and, sir, this is an executive order. They explain it to me. And, 90% of the time I sign it. 99% of the time I say do it. But they come up and I sign it. But You don't use Autopen. It's number one, it's disrespectful to the office. Number two, maybe it's not even valid because, who's getting him to sign? He had no idea what the hell he was doing. If he did, all of these bad things wouldn't be happening right now.
Well, we could discuss Autopen for hours, but Graham, can you give us a rundown on how this all came to light?
Yes, I can. Essentially, how this first came out was through the Heritage Foundation and a Heritage Foundation initiative known as the Oversight Project. Now, the Oversight Project basically is a project that pushes for transparency and accountability in government, so that the government is actually accountable to the people for what it does. And the way the Oversight Project operates is it uses FOIA requests, i.e., requests for government documents under the Freedom of Information Act, and essentially, the Oversight Project posted to X at the beginning of this whole thing. To their revelation of this was when they posted to X and they said, "quote We gathered every document we could find with Biden's signature over the course of his presidency. All used the same Autopen signature, except for the announcement that the former president was dropping out of the race last year." So, end quote. They didn't say so at the end of it. I said so. No. Anyway, obviously they didn't look at every single document Joe Biden had ever signed or supposedly signed, but that is a lot of documents. And of course, if it turns out, as one of Trump's advisors, a lawyer, off the top of my head, I don't remember his name exactly, Mike somebody, but he's a lawyer and a Trump advisor, and he said that if Joe Biden wasn't aware of some of this Autopen use, then the documents in question are basically null and void.
That gives me the willies a little bit, but having worked in the government for a state leader, Autopen is used frequently. I can guarantee you that. Not necessarily on the most important things, but
well, I think
presidential executive order is kind of important.
Well, I think you can probably confirm this for me, Sarah, because you have the experience to know this. But generally speaking, Autopen is used when there are multiple copies of the same document that need to be signed.
Yes,
it's like that. It's basically a time-saving measure.
And other things like proclamations and announcements where the governor or the leader or the senator or whatever is not around to do it. So yeah, but anyway, I don't want to go into that whole fast world. Anyway, I don't want to tell anybody I was part of the Autopen generation. Anyway, Mr. John Clark, can you maybe speak on the legality of the abuse of the Autopen briefly, John Clark?
Yes, I can. It's legal. But it's gray. It's gray. I can speak onto the grayness of the legality. I believe
well, that's what we need.
The U.S. Fourth Circuit has ruled that, to quote, the absence of writing does not prove a commutation did not occur. It raises the question. We're back to a question of fact again. The Constitution doesn't say you can't do it. As President Trump pointed out, he signs them by hand, executive orders and important documents. That would have clarified this. It's going to come down to whether Joe Biden actually had volitional involvement. Did he know what he was signing? Did he authorize it? And that's a question of fact. And regardless of whose side has the burden of proof, either he has to prove he knew and he's going to come testify, which we'll see after the Hur report, whether he has the capacity to testify to when we've got this whole shadow hanging over his competence. And there's a difference between, for instance, executive orders or authorizations for payments abroad. And then we have a second gray area because were these actually legitimate pardons at all? The purpose of a pardon is to express mercy and justice, not to avoid accountability. So the second issue that they have here is whether they're legitimate at all. But the fundamental issue will be is when he said and the press announced that he commuted 2,500 sentences for nonviolent offenders, did he not know that some of them were convicted murderers when Leonard Peltier and most of death row inmates their sentences were commuted? Did he know that? So we really have to find out, once again, question of fact. And the burden certainly will be in some part on the Biden administration if he wants these pardons in particular to stand. And how much can you pardon? So there's a second problem with the Autopen is the ability for the president to pardon. And if Anthony Fauci committed a crime against the U.S. government, it can be waived preemptively. But if they find out he buried somebody in a dumpster, I don't think it's going to be used that way. It's another gray area to just give blanket pardons retroactively or prospectively to a whole category of thousands of people who actually happen to be a lot of your political allies who you say you have to protect it against being unfairly targeted by a future administration.
Well, Dave, Mr. John picked up on something I want you to expand on, that death row thing. And, I have issues with death row inmates only because I really have to have proof beyond a reasonable doubt. And I don't know if they all were or not because I don't know anything about it. I'm not a lawyer. But who were the biggest benefactors of the pardon machine, Dave?
Well, I think obviously, the Biden crime family. And I only say that because one of the family was actually defined as a criminal. And the leaders of the January 6th Inquisition, I think there's no question about that, those who were pardoned. And then, of course, as John pointed out, there you have the prisoners who have committed the most heinous of crimes, who got a get out of jail free card. So what we don't know is the extent to which the Autopen was used to do the nation's business and, sign international agreements. I would question whether or not if some nameless bureaucrat in the White House happened to use the Autopen because he had a sudden urge to do that. Well, you don't know. That's the point. All of these things have this cloud of not knowing what was going on. And remember, the president doesn't operate the Autopen. Again, some faceless administrative staff person does. And he may do it at the behest of the president, but we have no idea. And it would be useful to go back and look at all of the official signatures that had something to do with the nation's business that committed America to do something. And if those were Autopen, then I think there is at least some question that those agreements need to be scrutinized and to decide whether or not the nation really needed to do that. And you have some basis for just discounting it. But what this has demonstrated is that what you found is that Biden actually did less in leading the country than anyone imagined.
I've seen a lot of this. I've seen so much talk about this on social media and just in the local, cafes and pub circles. And I mean, should we just move on? Should we just move on as a country and see what the next 4 years are going to give us? Or should we unravel the legacy of this administration? Andrew, you're on a perch up there up north. What do you think?
Well, excuse me. First, I'd say that if Trump's rhetoric actually moves beyond the digital confines to Truth Social or prepared remarks of the Justice Department, for what I've read, it will likely be shot down in court. Now, again, I'll defer to our legal affairs editor, Scott Cosenza. So all our viewers, I recommend contacting him and asking him and inundating his inbox with questions. Now, of course, if you're unraveling the previous administration's legacy, I would go after other things. One thing I would undo would be the Inflation Reduction Act, which a new report came out said that it's actually going to cost about $5 trillion in its lifespan. Another one I'd reverse would be the Chips and Science Act. Those are various things that the current Trump administration could do if you want to really unravel the previous administration's disastrous legacy. Now, of course, this leads to a broader question. Where does it end? Do you want to completely undo every single aspect of your immediate predecessor? Or another question is, how far do you want to go? I mean, if you want to go down the rabbit hole, go to, unravel Woodrow Wilson's legacy of, the income tax or the establishing the Federal Reserve. Of course, I had to turn this into an economic argument because, I'm not much of an expert. But yeah, so those are the things you want to do. So ultimately, if Trump went ahead with this, from what I've read, it would be shot down in court or it could serve as another political distraction for the administration's broader efforts.
Well, it's not a bad analysis there, Andrew Moran. I didn't
know Wilson had an Autopen.
In my opinion, I think you ask an interesting question, Sarah, because I think largely we should move on. Trump has got too many things to do that he needs to do, that he should do, that he can do for this country, for us to be dwelling in the past. I will make one exception to that. I think the whole January 6th select committee, or the unselect committee, as Trump likes to call it, I think those people on that committee deserve a reckoning. And I think they should actually be pursued to the maximum extent of the law or of any congressional investigations or anything, because that was one of the most shameful things that happened in U.S. history. I mean, we're talking about hundreds and hundreds of people were rounded up by the FBI, and yet they couldn't find one pipe bomber, and yet they rounded up all these hundreds of people from all over the country, and they threw them in prison. They denied them their constitutional rights. They had a star chamber type, even unauthorized, unofficial committee that Republicans weren't even allowed to select people to sit on. They tampered with witnesses. They tried evidence. Yeah. I mean, those people need to answer for what they did. The rest of it, honestly, I could care less. Let's not relitigate every single thing the Biden administration did. Right. No, absolutely. Right. We got better things to think
America
about.
voted for him, and so that's what we got. That was exactly what we all voted for. I mean, I can't speak for everyone, but he was our president for 4 years. So anyway, poor old Joe. I almost hope he can address every single pardon he gave. I'm not turning blue, holding my breath, though, on that one. But we'll keep you informed. Thanks for tuning in, and special thanks to this very smart gal. It's not easy being green. Just ask Tesla and SpaceX founder Elon Musk. Once the absolute hero in climate change circles, he's become the sworn enemy of all the people who once salivated about his electronic vehicle line. Now he's the orange man's go-to guy, and all hell has broken loose for the man. Now, climate activists are at a crossroads that will redefine if they are serious about their beliefs, or if they're just a bunch of stubborn, petulant, mouthy radicals that have taken way too many blue pills. Well, John Clark, what has happened to save the planet and buy Teslas?
Well, I think to properly understand the social justice cult is to understand that it is countercultural. It describes America as misogynistic, racist, the patriarchy, the 1619 Project, and we're destroying the planet through anthropogenic activity, which is ultimately self-hating. And as I've written a lot here at Liberty Nation, against that cult, all right, that climate cult, EV cars are not helping the planet. There's not enough lithium on the planet. The tire dust is destroying the oceans. So I hope they keep destroying EV cars in a way, because finally we could focus on something other than carbon dioxide. But what we see here is that they have to choose between the world that they say is ending in 10 years or destroying the world of Elon Musk. And this is the best cars. These are the best EV cars they have. And what, they're going to destroy them? How is that for the climate? So they're actually showing that either they don't believe that the climate is actually dying, all right, or that we're overheating through human causes, or that they hate Elon Musk more. And he used to be the darling of the left, right? And so what we really see is the self-immolation of an ideology, which is very Trotskyist in the sense that they're starting to eat their own. They went after Twitter similarly. That was their foundation for free speech, and then they just destroyed it. So next thing you know, they'll turn on Bernie Sanders and realize he's a millionaire shill, right? Because this is the beginning of the end of a cult, because it never made sense. The whole thing was built on fear-mongering and falsehoods, and now they're showing us that it was built on fear-mongering and falsehoods, and they are completely devouring their own agenda and their own rationalization for why they needed total control of the government in the world to save us from climate change, because clearly they don't care.
Andrew, is Canada torching Teslas too?
Yes. Just in the last week or two alone, I'll give you some examples here. In British Columbia, 2 Tesla chargers were torched. In Ontario, a Tesla Cybertruck was vandalized and branded with a swastika. In Saskatchewan, a Cybertruck was vandalized. A Cybertruck owner in Manitoba said he's received death threats. Across the country, people are just protesting at local Tesla dealerships. People are just having a job. It's absolutely absurd. The Vancouver Auto Show has had to remove Tesla cars from the event because they were worried about safety concerns. It's become absolutely ridiculous. And this is part of the reasons why, it's because Elon Musk is at the White House, but also in Canada, it's because of the ridiculous trade dispute. This is why I cannot stand trade wars, because people get this patriotism, this feigned patriotism. They're fighting for one side. So I can't stand it. But anyway, Canada, they're excluding Teslas from their whole electric vehicle incentives. So all of this proves, to echo exactly what John has been saying, it's never about the climate at all. For all the leftists owning a Tesla or promoting Elon Musk and celebrating him in Iron Man or that other god-awful sitcom where everyone laughs at every single thing, it was politically correct to do so, and I'm virtue signaling. And look how great of a person I am, but I'm so wonderful because I drive a Tesla. Now it's just, you're worried that you have to, that you're gonna go to the coffee shop and come out and your car is vandalized. There was a photo of this guy from the United States, and he had a thing on his car that said, "Oh, please, I don't like Donald Trump. Please don't attack my car. We love it." And this is what Canadians have turned into. They've metastasized into miscreants who just, who aren't the kind people that everyone described for years and years and years. People don't wear the Canadian flag in their backpacks anymore. Because Canadians have become absolutely ridiculous individuals for my fellow countrymen.
You folk. Wow. And that one guy in South Carolina tried to blow up a charging station and basically set himself on fire. So
yes, I saw that.
A ton of brains on this protesting stuff. So Graham, how do the Greta Thunbergs of the world handle this level of emotional betrayal?
Well, I don't think the Greta Thunbergs or wherever her name is, I don't think people like that. I don't think people with that mentality actually have any. They don't have any emotional attachment to any of this stuff at all. And it's kind of a paradox. I've always thought that is an interesting facet of kind of left wing progressive / socialist kind of thinking and their worldview. Is that they always seem to act and think on emotion rather than on facts and logic. And yet these people are, and look, I am not absolutely anyone who actually is watching the show who happens to be someone who just votes Democrat, but is otherwise a normal human being. I'm not talking about you, okay? Anyone out there who is a true liberal in the classical sense of the word liberal, I'm fine with those people. Never had a problem with liberals. But the progressives and the socialists and all these hardcore people, I genuinely believe that they are somewhere on the sociopath spectrum. They have no emotions and they have no principles. And as John alluded to, this entire climate change thing was all about, okay, what can we come up with? How can we come up with a problem that is so enormous and all-encompassing that if we convince everyone it's real, we can literally take over everything, the healthcare systems, the economy, gun control, everything, all in the name of saving the planet. And so it was all a big scam. And so they don't have any kind of emotional attachment to any of this, and they never feel any sense of shame or any sense of, oh, aren't we being hypocrites that now we're destroying an EV company? No, they don't even think like that. It doesn't even go through their heads. So the answer to your question is, they don't need to handle it because it's not something that affects them.
If I may just interject one thing quickly, there's such a dichotomy between how conservatives protest and how leftists protest. Conservatives, they disliked Bud Light because of the values that they were espousing, and they protested by not buying the beer. But leftists are protesting Tesla by terrorizing the company and terrorizing its employees and terrorizing its customers.
Well,
most of its customers are the liberals. Most of the Tesla owners are the left. Yeah. Sorry.
If the vandalism and violence weren't taking a toll on dealership owners, their staff members, just regular people like us, I don't think Elon Musk is going to be living on the streets anytime soon, Dave. I mean, where's the thought process here?
I think there's a bigger issue here, Sarah, and whether Mr. Musk is feeling pain is not really that issue. What we are faced with here is domestic terrorism. You know, it falls into the category of anti-government, authority behaviors, and it has nothing to do with the climate change fanatics. These acts of vandalism fit precisely the definition of terrorism. You know, the use of threats and violence to achieve some political or ideological aim. And one can argue whether or not they're clever enough to have an ideological aim. But the fact that it's done domestically makes it domestic terrorism. And the climate change crazies, animal rights loonies, or environmental terrorists have a long history of this kind of criminal behavior. And these folks have apparently decided that Mr. Musk represents an authority figure that must be stopped. Well, what needs to happen is that such acts of domestic terrorism as setting fire to Teslas or firing bullets into Tesla dealerships are treated as terrorism.
Well, I don't know. Hate is a powerful motivator. It always has been. It made the climate world turn on itself and abandon their core tenet. Come on. I don't get it. But hey, thanks, panel, for all of the insight, and thanks for watching. And we'll keep you in the loop. We are back to have a little fun with our panel of overly excitable people. Except for Dave. Our economic comic will take the lead on Just for Fun, so buckle up. Things are gonna get weird with Andrew Moran.
That's so insulting, jeez. Anyway, hello, la la la. Now, since Liberty Nation is political oriented, of course C5 is by extension, I have a question. What's the deal with politics? I don't get it. And also, what's the deal with airplane peanuts? Of course, as we all know, there's more to life than making shallow, fairly obvious observations. And here's another bit of life advice. If you want to make a person feel better after they sneeze, you shouldn't say, God bless you. You should say, you're so good looking. Now, if any of you are unaware what the heck I'm talking about, then I have a question for you. Have you never watched Seinfeld? Go on to the really big show that we all know that Dave Patterson will certainly not win. Am I right? Am I right, everybody? Anyway,
if he gets the answers right, he has to win. I don't do pity, points.
Andrew, I found that all arbitrary and capricious.
All right, here we go, everybody except Dave. Question number 1. From which university did the Trump administration recently cut $400 million in federal funding? Was it Columbia, Harvard, or Stanford?
Columbia.
Harvard.
You see, I know all of you are saying at the same time, but Dave is saying it first. That's why I have to go with Dave. I know Graham was complaining a few shows ago, but that's the voice I'm hearing first, unless anyone disputes that. But anyway, the answer is Columbia. Okay, question number 2. Why is Alicia Ortiz an illiterate immigrant who recently graduated with honors from Hartford Public High School in Connecticut? You're illiterate and you graduated? Anyway, she's suing the city, its Board of Education, and her special case manager. Is it for sexual assault, indoctrination, or negligence?
Negligence.
Dave won. Negligence.
I wrote the article and I still didn't get the point.
And I graduated from East Hartford High School. Good thing I wasn't in Hartford.
So yes, the answer is negligence.
You
wouldn't have me on your panel. I'd be illiterate.
Well, no. Okay, there's a backstory on that. The girl, she was 5 when they immigrated here, and from the Puerto Rican Department of Education, they hand-delivered to Hartford a note that said this child is dyslexic and needs special help, and they just ignored her. That's the backstory. So,
That's
anyway.
terrible.
You know what this means? Now we need to celebrate Puerto Rican Flag Day. That's another Seinfeld reference.
We don't, but we can move on.
Yes, exactly. And also, yes, the answer is neglect. And you can read more about this in a terrific article titled Neglect in Education When Illiteracy is Ignored. So question number 3. I love this one. Actually, I will do my impression of him. Who was the guest on the debut episode of This Is Gavin Newsom, the California governor's new podcast? Was it Kamala Harris, Charlie Kirk, or David Hogg?
Charlie Cook.
See, I even saw Dave's mouth move first. So it is Charlie Cook. Like I said last time, sorry, Cook, excuse me. Like I said last time, just mumble. Somebody spout gibberish. I don't care as long as before. Because I know you guys know the answer because you're all smart people, lovely people. But, so I'm going to give you...
That interview was actually a good interview. It was very interesting.
Yeah.
It was.
I listened to a lot of it.
Love the interview. It was great. Don't you just love the interview? Anyway,
I do.
So I lost my pen. I've lost track now of who's winning this thing. So far, Dave is in the lead with 3. So question number 4. Who was the only Republican in the House to vote against the continuing resolution on Tuesday, March 11th? Was it Thomas Massey of Kentucky, Andy Biggs of Arizona, or Barry Loudermilk of
Thomas Massey.
He jumped the gun on that.
I did. I got off. I got off before the green light went out.
You know what? Then you are disqualified from that question.
I feel
Thomas Massey. Thomas Massey.
Yes, ding, ding, ding.
second.
It is Thomas Massey. Stay sassy with Massey, as the kids say. Question number 5.
Do the kids say that, Andrew? Do they?
Question number 5. Name the term this defines. Quote, when state and non-state actors catalyze, manipulate, and/or induce mass migration to achieve political and geopolitical objectives. Is it Act Blue, weaponized migration, or political migration?
Weaponized migration.
Fascism.
And yes, the answer is weaponized migration. And you can read more in this fascinating article titled Illegal Aliens, Still a Lot to be Done, warns House Committee. Question number 6. Speaking to Larry Kudlow on Fox Business, what did Elon Musk, head of the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, say was, quote, one of the biggest sources of fraud in the world? Was it think tanks, government-funded NGOs, or the Democratic Party?
Government-funded NGOs.
I'm gonna give that to John, excuse me, because he said B, and that was before everything else. So yeah, John, good man.
Great article, by the way. It was a great article. I shared it widely.
It was a good article.
Question number 7. A former employee of Facebook released a memoir this week detailing the desperate but failed attempts the company's CEO made in 2015 to operate his signature platform in what country? Was it
China,
Mexico, China, or Russia?
China.
Graham got that one. Yes.
You guys are all just cheating now.
Joe Schaefer, great article by Joe. I read that one too. Go on.
You know what? I'm just surprised. None of the questions have relation to any of the content I wrote, and they're terrific articles I wrote. What the heck is that? Who wrote?
Not everything's
trivia?
about eggs.
Who wrote this trivia?
Not everything's about you, Andrew. I'm sorry to say.
Who wrote this trivia? Was it A?
But you know what, Sarah, I'll tell you, my mother always told me that. My mother always told me that not all about you. You're not special. But anyway, question number 8. Which technology is now being used to monitor potato harvest? John, come on. Virtual reality, holographic displays, or artificial intelligence?
Artificial
AI.
But see, Dave said B, artificial intelligence.
No, I said C.
Oh, I see. Okay, anyway. Yeah, okay. So anyway, yes, Dave is correct. C, artificial intelligence. And that was actually a very unique article. Very good. You can read more about it on libertynation.com titled AI Agriculture Boosts Soil, Crops, and Human Health. Everyone give a round of applause to John.
And Dave uses AI to win this trivia.
Somehow he is cheating. Somehow he is cheating.
He's using AI drones.
Some little light comes on fast.
So question number 9, moving on. You can actually, if you guys watch segment 2 of today's C5, you'll know the answer to this question. What tool did the Heritage Foundation discover former President Joe Biden used to sign most documents? Was it Autopen, Spirograph, or Chief of Staff?
Autopen.
Spirograph.
Yes, Graham got
I
that.
want to go with Spirograph just because I have to.
Etch a Sketch should have been one of the possible answers, I think.
Well, if it's a tool, I thought it might be Hunter or Kamala.
Last question here of this week's C5 trivia. 10. In another quest to learn more about why autism rates have spiked over the years, the Centers for Disease Control will take a second look at what theory. Dave, what's that behind you? Vaccinations, seed oils, or school lunches?
Hey, vaccination.
Vaccinations.
Yes, it is. It's vaccinations. And you can read more about this on another great article from us, say, America's Changing Health Landscape. And Dave wins, but Graham was, for the second straight time, it was in second place. So congratulations. I believe it's like I lost my pen. I lost my auto pen, so I lost track. I know Dave wins because he always wins. I think Graham got second place. And that is for me this week. Go back to Smith Sarah Cowgill.
Thank you,
Or
Andrew.
here. One or the other. Which one?
Oh, well, guys, thanks for playing again. And for you out there, we hope we left you with some smiles and a little extra pub chatter this week. Thank you. Thanks, panel. That's it for our Conservative 5 panel today. Check out our other C5 shows and segments on your favorite video platform, YouTube, Vimeo, Rumble. We're on them all. As well, Liberty Nation News has its own Roku channel where you can see all of our TV productions. Now, Liberty Nation News does not endorse candidates, campaigns, or legislation, and this presentation is no endorsement. I'm your host, Sarah Cowgill. Thanks for joining us today for the latest news and commentary. Your choice for free thinking, free speech, libertynation.com.